$5 to $10 into an application. An IoT chip will not cost more than 50 cents or $1. So if you are going to put an Arduino in production, $5 to $10, it's not going to work. I have seen an application in Chile that we are putting some on the codes. And this is too big. Or sometimes it's too big, an Arduino or a Raspberry. You cannot do that. So you have, after you do your proof of concept, you do an FPGA prototyping. And based on the volume you are planning to have, you go to an FPGA or an ASIC, so a chip. But don't stop here, and this is one of the problems we have in the region. We always stop here. We have very good ideas, we have very good prototypes, but we don't go into the final production. We don't escalate the production. So we need to develop a system, FPGA, ASIC, how to do it. This is what we are trying to understand during this workshop. The second thing is where the data is processed. So at the beginning, everyone was thinking that the data will be processed at the cloud. It's only convenient when the action is not immediately requested. Let's assume that you are trying to have a driverless car. And if you have to send information to the cloud that there is another car coming, you will have an accident, for sure, because first of thing, you have a bandwidth problem. If you have too many data going to the cloud, that will not work. Even if your processor is very fast, you have to consider that your speed will be given by the bandwidth of the transmission of the communication. So we have to process more and more at the edge. Cannot send all the data. Sometimes you don't have changes. Sometimes if you are looking, for example, for temperature, the temperature will change maybe once in a while. You don't have to send all the data to the cloud. You just send what is changing. Also, the gateway is becoming more and more common, and Cisco is producing now some routers that have the capability of processing data, because they call that, instead of the cloud, they call that the fog processing. And the edge is becoming common to have the processing there, so this is the reason that ARM is promoting their processor for IoT. Synopsys is also having their own processor. It's very efficient and need for fast action. So now, second conclusion, we need to process data at the edge. So we need to consider that the edge is not just a sensor. It's much more than that. So let's propose, this is the architecture I'm proposing for the edge. So you will have the sensor and actuators. Sensor will receive the information coming from what you are measuring. Actuator is you are doing something based on that. You have your processor, you have your storage, you have your software, communication, you have the battery, and you have the energy harvester, because it is becoming very important, very, very important to have systems that can stay very, very long time, and I don't have to charge every few minutes or every couple of hours. One of the applications I'm trying to do one day is a special chip for pets, for dogs, that are stored in the street. In Chile, they are installing the dogs to resell that. Okay, because it's a good business. You have a very nice dog, you can get maybe a $500, $600 per dog. So my problem is, if I put the chip in the collar, the guy will take the collar out and that's it. So I will not be able to find my dog using GPS. So if I implant a chip in my dog, a dog life is 14, 15 years. So I need batteries for 14, 15 years. I cannot put a solar panel to my dog, because so we need to find a way. So some people say, yeah, but you can use kinetic energy, so the dog is moving, or the tail of the dog is moving. So there is a lot of ideas, but this is something we need to develop, energy harvester. This is very, very important for IoT. So now the device market, we have 5 billion people connected. They are saying that by 2020, some nice numbers about the CAGR, the volume driven by small home and wearables and so on. It depends on who you read, but some people are saying that the important thing in IoT will be the industrial IoT, meaning the IoT that will go to the industry. Are we going to wear too many things in ourselves to measure how many steps we do per day, or how many, I don't know, if we are okay, we are not okay, maybe. But the important thing will be the industrial sync and some other kind of application that will be more related to the industry. So they are talking 2021, 2 billion units and so on. Okay. So now, what is the landscape for 2021? So we have the home IoT. We are talking about 450 million units per year of this kind of smart lamps, some devices, 60 million, 160 million. If you go to a smart building, industrial IoT, we are also talking about millions of units of things. This is the smart meters, a very important domain, the connected vehicle, the smart cities, the wearable infotainment, and the health and fitness. So we are seeing very important things here. The home for 450 millions, 286 millions, so the most important thing will be here, and the connected vehicle, of course. Okay, but this is something we are going to see. Now, if we look the market, the semiconductor market for IoT device, we see that it's going very fast and it's growing. Very interesting for the industry, because we are seeing, as I told before, that the semiconductor is doing very well. And one of the reasons is IoT, because there is more and more chips that are designed. And the reason that we are designing chips is because we need those chips for the IoT. We cannot stay with the platform. So you see the consumer, the medical, the automotive, etc., etc. So it's a good future for the semiconductor industry on that. What are the key design requirements for an IoT device? The first one is the wireless connectivity. So my first question will be what de facto standard will emerge, because we don't have a standards today that is being used in IoT. Security, that is very important, pervasive security needed, but what exactly is required? When we talk about security, sometimes we don't even know what we are talking about. Sensor processing, how much processing and where will the on-chip integration be? So where we are going to do the processing of the information, and the energy efficiency, add connectivity, security, and processing while extending battery life, how we deal with that. So some examples of IoT architecture. I know that Jose was showing examples using ARM architecture. ARM processor, we are using the ARC processor, which is our own processor. So we have the high-end edge device with a lot of things. It's working with Linux, Android, and the technologies using there is from 65 nanometers to 28, 16 nanometers, and going below. Just to give you an important fact about this kind of technologies, the nanometers. Today, there is almost 10,000 new designs that start per year. A very small percentage of these 10,000 designs are made on 28 nanometers and below. And there is only 5 companies working on that. Qualcomm, MediaTek, Apple, Intel, and Samsung. The rest of the design are made from 45 nanometers to 90 nanometer, 180 nanometer, 250. So for IoT, we don't really need the 28 nanometer. It depends on the application you are doing. Of course, if you are doing a smartwatch, you want something very small and very efficient. But if you are doing something for the agriculture or for the industry, you don't need that. So we also have the low-end edge devices, which is used as a real-time operating system. There is a few that are free, or so you can pay for that. There is an integrated radio, 90 nanometers, maybe going to 55 or 40 nanometers, 0.9 volt. And the smart analog devices is a bar metal and 180 nanometer, sometimes 130 or 110 or 90 nanometers. So there is a broad range of different kind of application that will use this IoT, will use the different kind of components. And as you probably know, today designing a chip is like a Lego. So you put things together, you put some IPs together, and sometimes you develop your own part, but in general you are doing like a Lego, so you put the embedded flash, the processor, the memories, the communication part, the sensor part, and the security part, and so on. So IoT is incredible opportunity with some hardware. So the hardware we are seeing today is the battery life. It's expected to extend while adding connectivity. So coming back to my example of my dog, one of the ideas will be if I can, from my cell phone, activate the communication part. So I can have the communication part of that chip that is implanted in my dog sleeping, and I can wake up that part with just sending some kind of protocol or something to the chip, because if not, I will not be able to keep the battery for so long. So we are talking about that. We also have the interoperability. We have too many standards. This is like the TV standards. We have in the past the NTSC, the PAL, the SECAM, so the world cannot make an agreement or the plugs. If you look the plugs, every time we travel, we have to travel with a lot of converters, or go to the hotel reception to say, do you have an adapter for my plug, because I cannot plug my computer. So you have the battery life, so we're talking about low power. You have the type of functionality, connectivity and energy, dictate cost, because we are talking about the system cost, the integration, the wireless power management, memory, sensor, processor, etc. And in 2016, new hacks to worry about smart homes and connected car. I don't want to have my car being hacked by someone and take control of my car. So we have what we call the constrained IoT, which is the common characteristics. So the constrained IoT are the IoT that we use at a very low power, very few communication and very small. So we use the application for that is the MEMS, the motor control, the power management. It's a small real-time operating system or bare metal. So you have some batteries, the Bluetooth and the smart analog, big A, little d. So it's as small as an analog chip than a digital one. And the unique technology and IP needs, we are talking about analog, the audio, the power, the sensors, and those are the technologies we are using for that. And you see you have some memories here, some ROM, the interfaces, and you have the processor and ADCs and DAC and the GPIO, so you can just process the data you are getting in from the sensor through the converters, and you can send some data out from to the actuators. There is also the always-on IoT, so this is the devices that will be always-on, IoT wearables, smart energy hubs, the health and fitness device, they have to be on. You can stop the wireless audio. It's an RTOS or bare metal. There's also the lithium batteries and so on. By the way, that's another good example of how the region is doing so bad. Do you know what is the triple ABC for the lithium? This is the three major lithium producer of the world: Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. Do you know where the batteries are made? Not in Argentina, not in Bolivia, not in Chile. So we are making a mistake there, but that's part of our story. And we are doing the same exactly with electronics, so it's not new. So we have there the common system components, as I said, the unique technology, so you are using the embedded flash, non-volatile memories, the connectivity, and so on. So now the processor is the most important part of almost all the things we are using today, all the electronics, and you have different kind of IP market segment for the processor, but we are talking about the Internet of Things, and what we are trying to do with our processor into the IoT devices is to control the sensors, to do power management, which is very important, embedded control, signal processing, and face object detection. So there is part, as I say, that is being doing here, but we also have some other applications for the processor that are not part of the IoT market we are trying to discuss right now. So just because ARM was presenting their processor, I have to present my processor, but I'm not trying to do any publicity here, but this is the kind of processor that Synopsys is having. And we have ultra low power, the security processor for IoT, the highest performance our core to date, and the EV family that is it's the state of the art for convolutional neural network and so on. So this is the kind of things we can offer to you guys if you want to develop an IoT device. Okay, there is some noise there. Okay, so another important thing that I found on all the information I have read, that we are having a change on the trends. We start with looking for silicon IP, and now we are talking about, we start with blocks, a processor or an interface or a USB. Now we are talking about subsystem. So now we are starting to sell subsystems that include the hardware and the software, because when you are going to develop, sometimes you You need some part of the software. If you are using a processor, maybe you need some drivers. And you don't have to write all the drivers every time you are doing a new system. Or, for example, in the case of ARC, and I'm sure that ARC is having the same, we have a community of developers that are sharing software, drivers, some operating system and so on. Because it is now, so this is the system. We talk about IP blocks, now we're more talking about IP subsystem, which include the software as well. So coming back to my first tab about the battery and so on, now let's talk a little about security. Because, you know, we know how to do low power chip. This is something we already know, so we can make a check there. We know how to do connectivity, check. We can find the things. We know how to do wireless, check. But the security is a new problem that is starting to take us. And it's a very interesting example, this one. We put my glasses to read a couple of things. So we are attacking here a baby. You know, we have systems where we can listen the baby. I remember when my son was a kid, now he's 26 years old, so I'm not listening anymore what he's doing, but when he was less than a year, we were having those systems, radio systems, so we were in another room and we were listening when he was crying. Okay, so now we can have the baby monitor attack, so there is the monitor, and the guy started to attack the remote communication. So the guy is going into the cloud and get into the remote communication and get into the system. The second thing he did, he escalated the privilege attacking device. So now he's going into the device and he's getting all the privilege into the device. And the final thing is replace the software. So now I can listen that my baby is sleeping, or I can even see a picture of my baby or a video, which is not real. So the security is becoming more and more important. And one of the things we have to consider is that we always talk about security, and I will talk about software security in a while, but we always talk about how to fix the problems or how to implement a new patch or how to install the patch. If you go to a few months ago, there was this big attack called WannaCry that was going into the Windows operating system, and people were saying the guys that didn't apply the patch were attacked. But the question is, why there is a patch? Why we are not developing hardware and software in the right way? Because the security is that. So we are creating the vulnerabilities. It's not that the vulnerabilities are coming from God or from the sky or whatever. It's we are creating them. So everyone is affected, from consumer and enterprise. Security is crucial and needs to be addressed at all levels, starting with the system on chip. Latest hacks result in investigation. Companies need to be prepared to justify the security of their product, and the growth is 30% to 95% in 2020. Companies will have this stuff. But now let's understand security. So what is security? The first thing is, okay, what is meant by security? Confidentiality. I want to protect access to information. I don't want my information to be read by anyone. Let's say that we have a medical records, we have some commercial reports and so on. Integrity. We need to be sure that the data has not been altered. Authenticity. We need to be sure that the data is the real one. Let's assume that we are, for example, uploading, okay, today cars. When you go to the service with your car, they change the software of the car. In the future, maybe in 1 year or 2 years, they will upload and they will update the software of your cars through the air. How can we be sure that the software we are receiving in our car is the right one? Okay, so this is something to consider. Common security technology, the cryptography and secure protocol, the platform security and tamper detection prevention. So the key question is what we are trying to protect. And this is something, so you can protect, the more you protect things, so in platform security, the wearables and smart home, the mobile e-commerce, the mobile STM, DRM, the smart meter, the e-passport, e-banking. So here you have the complexity and cost of the problem of the security, and here cost and reward attack. So the value of attack could be the reward, money, or fun. Some people are doing attack just for fun. The technical challenge, the terrorism, the cyber terrorism we are talking today. And the cost versus risk is the time you spend, the cost of equipment, the expertise required, the system access, and the legal implication. So IoT applications are covering all that. So we need to take care of that. So this is security threats that are a top concern for IoT developers. We have the communication, the software, and the hardware. This is the kind of thing we have to take care. So at the network level, we have the communication attacks, we have the software attack. At the chip level, we also have the software attack, and we have the invasive hardware attack, where we are trying to make some changes in your house. So what we have created the market is what we call the trusted execution environment, which is a special part of our chip that provides a secure area of the system on chip to guarantee code and data protection, that maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity of a system. The code and data are separate, that in software or hardware combinations, so we can have a single CPU with hardware separation, physically separate secure CPU. So this is the kind of architecture. So we have the normal world, this is the non-trusted apps, the apps we don't care, and this is the secure world, the trusted executive environment with maybe a special processor, or even with hardware separation, or single CPU with hardware separation. So we can ensure that our system is really doing well. So just to give you some ideas, so this is the 4 challenge I was putting at the beginning, and of course we are, Synopsys is covering that. I know that ARM is also covering. So we have the battery operation demands lowest power consumption, the system cost, space constrained applications require compact area, small code size, and you have the integration, which is on-chip integration of sensor control, processing, and communication, and finally the security. Just to give you a small example that I don't have any slide for the moment because I'm just starting a new project in my life. That's my new challenge. I'm starting to do a PhD now, and the topic of my PhD will be IoT for agriculture. And we are saying that we have to put a chip into the land that will cost no more than 50 cents. And the chip should be able to do the sensor and the actuator. And what we are going to do is we are going to find a mathematical model for each kind of plant, for tomatoes, lettuce, because they grow in different way. Put that smart into the chip we are going to develop and make sure that we have the highest possible production of those kinds of food. So it is important to have all these kind of things. Battery operation, because I don't want to have I will have solar panels, of course. System cost, I am not putting chips that are $10 or $20, just 50 cents. On-chip integration of sensor control, processing, and communication. I have to have everything in only one chip, and the security as well. So let's go now to the last part of that, the software, because we always talk about the hardware, but what about software? The first thing is to look at that. Brazil is here, it's not too good, it's not too bad. Oh, Brazil is like the US, so it's really bad. Sorry, the darkest is the best here. This is a study about the people that change the password of the routers at home. You know, when you buy a router from Cisco or any other company, the administrator login is admin and the password is admin. So US is the third country worldwide, Brazil is almost at the same level, that don't change that. So when you go back home, you change the password of your router. This is the first step to go into your home. It's very easy to attack your home if you are using admin. Okay? That's very easy. Just take the Wi-Fi signal you are seeing outside, you go there and you change whatever you want. You can even find your bank account, your password, and so on. So please change that. This is the first thing about security. Now, what about software? You know, I'm taking a plane tomorrow. The Boeing 787 is 12 million lines of code. A high-end car is more than 100 million lines of code. Linux is around 8 millions. The Mars the rover was almost 5 million, 6 million, etc. So software is becoming very, very important in this world. And there is more and more security concern about software, not only hardware, but also software. And IoT is a combination about hardware and software, do not forget that. So what people is looking for, and this is a very interesting example. By the way, that was made by Chrysler. There were no real hacker. That was a test made by hacker. And they arrived to get the car out of the road just by hacking the software of the car. So it's possible, it's possible. And after they changed just 1.4 million vehicles for fix, because they spent some money on that, but now with the cyber terrorism and all this kind of thing, we're having this kind of crazy guys going with a truck over the people, but we don't need anymore these crazy guys that go for suicide. We can just make it remotely. So what people is looking when they have a device, secure boot. This is the first thing. I want my device to be secure when I boot. And this is also hardware and software combination. The second one, runtime operation. I want to be protected during operation. I want to have secure updates. I want onboard secure storage for sensitive user and system data. We were talking about the trust environment and so on. We want the secure and authenticate communications only with services and entities controlled and authorized by user. And I want to have flexibility because I don't want to have a system that is not connected to the world. So now hardware security, we know how to do it, almost. We almost know how to do it. There are new things. But what about software? Okay, it's a good way to protect your car. Okay, sorry, let me come back. This is impossible to hack so far. No, they can cut the chain. Don't worry. Okay, but whenever you have a automotive and hardware supply chain, you have this kind of things. So you know exactly who are your tier 1 supplier, the tier 2, etc., etc. And whenever you have a problem, you can trace back who produced the problem, okay? So you know that you have a problem there, and finally you find out that this is the guy that created the problem. So you can go to see your supplier and say, hey guy, you know, you are not doing well, I need to change. But what about software? So software, there is 3 suppliers, the open source. We like open source. The third party. By the way, Microsoft is a third party. SAP is a third. There is a lot of third parties. And the internal engineers that are doing the software. And do not forget that software engineers are considered they are the best. They know everything they have to do. They never make mistake. I have been software engineer for more than 30 years, so I know that